Hey everyone, so it looks like we are potentially reaching the finale of Wano. The raid might still fail. But if this is the finale of Wano, it means that it's time for the juicy character moments, the growth, the drama, emotion, power-ups, etc., etc. This is the good stuff. Now, Wano so far has not been a very Straw Hat-centric arc, but at this point they are stepping into the spotlight, and it looks like we are going to get to see every Straw Hat shine by the end of this battle. That makes sense. Wano is the arc that pretty much every prior New World arc has been leading up to. This is the big finale to a very long segment of the story. So if there was ever a time to get to really let the main characters take the floor and have some great moments, it would be now. As such, I'm going to be running through each of the Straw Hats and talking about my hopes, my expectations for them, for their characters by the end of the arc. Not in a, oh, this has to happen sort of a way, but more like, this feels like the development they seem set up to get, or this feels like something that is maybe long overdue. Obviously, you all may not agree, so let me know in the comments below, and before we get into it, make sure to subscribe for more One Piece content every week. So, starting with Zorro. I am sure that Zorro is going to get shine in this fight with Kaido. I'm sure he is going to give Kaido another scar, and I also personally hope that Zorro gets his own one-on-one fight through all of this because he hasn't had a serious one-on-one fight that really pushes him in the New World. But all of that aside, that's not what I really want to focus on here. Those things would be nice, they'd be great, but what I really personally need to see for Zorro is a little struggle. Because yes, Zorro is a badass character, that is a huge part of his appeal. He's strong, he's not easily shaken, he doesn't back down, etc., etc. A lot of his best moments pre-time skip have been Zorro being quote-unquote badass, and I think throughout the New World that has gotten ramped up to 11, where it has started to feel like nearly every arc Zorro has been in, he gets some epic scene, he gets to look consistently cool, and Wano has just taken it up several notches on top of that. Literally just look at the first chapter of the arc, that pretty much sets the tone for more and more badass Zorro moments from then on. Not to mention Zorro pre-time skip has often been fairly detached, or unfazed by problems that come up. His default state among the crew is sleeping. But I think in the New World, even that's been taken up a notch, with Zorro literally casually napping in the midst of a final battle. That's how unfazed he is by most problems in the New World. I think Wano is the first arc that we've finally even gotten a scene of him actually losing his cool, and even that was very, very brief. All that is to say that it's time to see Zorro really struggle. Let me clarify, because they're going to struggle obviously, they're in a fight with Kaido, but this is what I mean specifically. I think almost all of Zorro's best moments in the series come from seeing Zorro basically go through hell. Seeing him experience extreme pain or suffering, oftentimes coming up short in some way and then having to come back stronger, or overcoming his limits in the moment, whatever it may be. And this is just very important for his character, because from the start of the story, what we've regularly seen emphasized is that of all people, Zorro's path is not meant to be easy. His journey is meant to be one of the hardest. It's seeing his strength of will and spirit throughout that which produces his best moments and makes him such a great character. We have not had any of that in the New World so far. So when I say I want to see him struggle, I'm not talking about just having a difficult fight. I'm saying having him go through something meaningful, having him come up against a limit, having him actually finally fall short in some significant way, something that, as we've seen so many times before in his best moments, something that forces him to actually get introspective again about his journey to becoming the strongest swordsman. This is the country of swordsmen, after all. Zorro is going to be a much stronger swordsman by the end of this arc. So if that's the case, then what I want to see is Oda putting Zorro through the ringer again in a way beyond anything that has come before. If he's going to get tremendous growth, then make him go through a difficult and harrowing, maybe even a humbling experience in the process. That's what has always produced the best moments for his character, and it's something that's been sorely missing for him for a decade now. Yes, Zorro is great when he is the cool, unfazed, badass guy, but Zorro is at his best when he's forced to face his limits, when he is forced to struggle and grow. Now, Sanji is a bit of the opposite at the moment. Sanji's got to come up big, soon, like really big, really soon. I'm not going to rehash a bunch of the points I've talked about in the past. No, I don't think Oda hates Sanji. Oda loves all the Straw Hats, and I genuinely think Sanji is one of his favorite characters. I've talked before about how Sanji often goes through these cycles where Oda is okay with, for long periods of time, not giving him major fights or big moments, only to then suddenly rectify that in a huge way by having Sanji come up really big, often in moments we don't expect. I think that's great. I'm sure Oda is going to do it again, but I think it's important to acknowledge that it has now been a long time since Sanji has had a memorable moment where he feels like the cool characters that so many readers loved pre-time skip. Don't look at Whole Cake Island, because that was not really an arc that was really meant to make Sanji look cool or badass in the traditional fighting sense. It explored the other aspects that make him a great character, but Sanji has not gotten the moments we were used to pre-time skip that we loved him for in a long, long time. And that would be fine. But on top of that, Sanji has had way more moments where he's been made the butt of the joke in recent times. Yes, sometimes in a way, sure, that reflects character growth, but nonetheless, that's not what readers are missing at this point. At this point, most readers miss the Sanji that could be the butt of the joke, but also come in clutch in a huge way. Does anyone even remember the moment where Sanji saved Momonosuke at this point? Like, so many crazy things have happened since then that even that moment feels honestly pretty minor in retrospect. If you compare it to iconic moments from pre-time skip like Mr. Prince sabotaging Enel's ship, saving the crew from the Buster Call, this Momonosuke moment kind of pales in comparison, though it definitely is a step in the direction of what people want to see. I like to think that this moment against Black Maria is going to be the turning point. It is hard for him to be mocked much more than this. It does feel like we've passed the Khalifa point of the story, so hopefully we can move on to the resurgence of Sanji and get to see him shine in a big way. And at this point, I don't think it can even just be a big fight, because it's been 400 chapters of Sanji not really getting the shine he used to, and being treated as a joke more frequently than he used to. I would hope that Oda has a big fight planned, as well as a little something else on top of that, hopefully something where he can also use his brain to come in clutch like he used to. Now, on the flip side, two characters who I don't think really need that much in Wano. Anything we get for them is basically gravy, at least for me, in my opinion. I think Usopp and Nami have been flying pretty high throughout the New World, at least as of late. With Usopp, I think he is the easiest character for Oda to consistently write significant character moments and scenes of growth for. There's just so many different ways we've seen Oda spin it throughout the series. And by the way, a side note, I think a lot of people think that Usopp just recycles the same arc or basically goes through the same development of overcoming cowardice each time, but it's really not. Oda mixes it up really well and has very different approaches to how Usopp's going to grow in a new way each arc. For example, Enies Lobby, he learned that even if he's too weak to win certain fights, there are other ways for him to contribute outside of winning fights that the others can't do. Whereas then Thriller Bark was the flip side. That was the first time there was a fight that he could win that nobody else could. Along those lines, in the New World, recently we got Dressrosa, which was the first arc Usopp really had to step up and be a hero for people he didn't know, be a hero for people who weren't actually his comrades. Usopp wasn't in Whole Cake Island, so Dressrosa, I consider it's very recent for him. That's pretty much the major arc for him before Wano, and we're probably getting Elbaf right after Wano, and that's pretty much guaranteed to be an Usopp-centric arc, which means that bottom line, I don't really think some Usopp moments are, quote-unquote overdue for us at this point. It would definitely be nice, and he's clearly going to get a fight, and Usopp pretty much always gets moments of growth in his fights. So I'm looking forward to see what that could be. But that's about it. I had talked about in past videos how I felt like a low-key character arc possibly being written in for him in Wano would be a new way to test his bravery, would be how Usopp fares as a captive, since loyalty and the importance of not selling out your allies has been played up so much during this whole saga. From Zou all the way through Wano, and Usopp in particular was especially shocked at the Mink's refusal to sell out Raizo to Jack. Usopp has talked multiple times about how he thinks he would just cave under torture, so I don't know. I think it would be great to see him in this scenario if it happens to happen. If the raid fails, I think it would be a great way to set up that scenario for him, him being tortured a little bit. But I don't think this little character thread has been played up enough that it has to happen by any means. It would be nice if it did, but I don't expect it to. Nami, on the other hand, already interestingly enough had the scenario happen in a way, not exactly with her being tortured for information, but similar enough with Ulti demanding that Nami say that Luffy won't be Pirate King, and Nami refusing. Huge loyalty points for her right there. You could argue that this follows up on her conversation with Usopp about caving under pressure. We even saw Nami terrified of torture earlier in Whole Cake Island, so I like to think that Oda had these scenes in mind when he wrote this scene. While I love this moment, I definitely think it is weaker than it could have been if we saw the lead up beforehand rather than just being kind of dropped into it. For example, the moment it mirrors, which was Usopp's moment in Alabasta, that Usopp scene was so powerful because we got to experience the entire fight with him first and feel just how outmatched and in over his head Usopp was we got to experience him having this mental breakdown and running away, which then made it all the more impactful when we realized that the one thing Usopp will not let slide, the one thing he cannot run away from, is when someone mocks his friend's dreams, and he would stake his life on that. So I do think that this Nami moment we got was ultimately a much weaker imitation of that moment, but still a welcome callback. I enjoyed it for what it was. If that's her best scene of the arc, I would not mind at all. Beyond that, Nami in general, I don't think there was anything else really built up for her character throughout Wano that I'm, expecting or waiting on some sort of payoff for. I think she got plenty of shine throughout Whole Cake Island, plenty of great moments, both dramatic moments and action moments, and already in Wano, just seeing her think of how to use Tama's abilities to turn the tides was pretty much classic Nami. I would like to see her earn Zeus back in some way, but that remains to be seen. Any major focus on Nami as a character, I wouldn't personally expect to happen till it's time for her to shine again, really with the spotlight on her when they're on their way to Raftel. And that brings us to Chopper. There is still tremendous potential for Chopper and Wano. I personally hope that this virus wasn't the best that we get. I just think the direction with his character, his next step, has been a little unclear at times in the New World, so it can feel like he's starting to default a little towards being treated as a mascot. And by direction, I mean that when Chopper first joined the crew, the direction with his character, what Oda was doing with him, was very clear. Chopper was the naive one. He was the little kid who was venturing out into the world for the first time and had to generally learn how to be a man. Through Alabasta, that's where he's learning how to help the crew for the first time. Through Skypiea, that was his first really significant character arc of him learning how to become an independent, reliable crewmate and basically becoming a real pirate. Throughout the Davy Backfight and Water 7 arcs, that was where Chopper has to face some of the harsher realities of the world and come to terms with them. At the same time, Oda was also focusing a little bit on Chopper being a monster, which was a source of pain for him at one point, but slowly that becomes something that he is even proud of, to the point that by the time we get to the New World, Chopper is happy to be a monster for the sake of his friends. So where does that leave him now that we're in the New World? Because Chopper is not the naive little kid anymore. In fact, more than ever, we see him actually having independent storylines where he's in charge, he's the one with the experience, others are looking to him for direction, and he actually has sidekicks who are more naive and innocent than him. That's great. I think we've got Chopper, the relatively independent, reliable adult at this point. He's also embraced being a monster at this point, but because of that, I don't think his character has really been challenged in any new way in a while. As a doctor, he's been consistently successful in a pretty straightforward manner in the New World. Basically, problem pops up, we're told that Chopper solves it, and it doesn't really go beyond that. I think the Ice Oni situation had really strong potential for putting him in a pressurized situation as a doctor, but again, he seems to kind of have just solved it. I really hope for something more from him in Wano because we're approaching the endgame where he wants to be able to cure any disease. And the potential in Wano specifically is huge for him to have a genuinely great storyline as a doctor, something more than just the Ice Onis, something that forces character growth in some way related to his dream of being able to cure all diseases. I mean, is it a coincidence that Hiruluk was cured upon seeing Sakura petals and we are in Wano, the land where that concept could be brought into play again? Not saying as a magical cure-all, but at least maybe having Chopper draw some inspiration from it. What about smiles? Can that pose as a more unique, significant problem that makes Chopper think or struggle a little bit or grow a little bit than the Ice Onis? Could Chopper's Rumble Ball still come into play with all these zone users? I don't know, but some direction for Chopper would be great right about now. I think he's grown from a boy to a man, so hopefully we can see more of him growing as a doctor this arc. And now these next three I'm just going to lump together, Robin, Brook, and Frankie. For them, the bar is lower, so I'm not looking for as much. Robin and Brook are both finally getting their first major fight in the series. For Frankie, this is probably going to be his first major fight since Fukuro, since Senior Pink, at least to me, was mostly a gag fight. But for these three characters, it's not just that they're finally getting some fights to themselves. I would love to actually get to hear their thoughts. I think very often throughout the New World, we haven't really gotten their perspective on things beyond the surface level. I love this moment from Robin. I would love for this not to be a one-off. The fact that she also cares about protecting her friends, having them rely on her, that's something that maybe hasn't been hinted at since, the time skip. And sure, she's not a very vocal character, but Brook is. And Brook's dialogue is very often just relegated to gags, or not really commenting on the situation in a substantive way. I love this scene from Whole Cake Island because it was a rare moment where Brook felt like a real character who was affected by the events that were happening and had a clear, new personal motivation from these events. Frankie, same thing. He's hilarious, but Senior Pink was already a gag fight. Can there be something more to his fight with Sasaki? I love the theory people have thrown around that Sasaki may even be related to Kokoro. A lot could come out of that. So these three, I really just want to see more spotlight on them as individuals, getting more of their perspectives, their motivations, their feelings, their thoughts, etc. And I do think we are set up to get that. And lastly, we have Jinbe. The one thing I need from Jinbe is very, very simple, and I think all of you will agree with me on this. I need to know what happened at the end of Whole Cake Island. The single biggest cliffhanger to a One Piece arc ever, with the fates of half the major characters of the arc up in the air. This strange delay to Jinbe being in the Wano arc. What was the reason for all of this? Is there something he's not telling us? What exactly is the deal with Jinbe here? I get that he's a permanent Straw Hat now. I've come around to that. I actually even like it now. I'll be happy to see his fight in whatever character moments he gets. I don't mind if Oda doesn't put a big focus on him in Wano, because it doesn't even feel that necessary to me at the moment. He was a late addition to this arc after all. It's just cool that he's here and getting some action. But we need to know what happened back there. Because look, a lot of you may have forgotten about this. It was long ago at this point. It doesn't feel as big of a deal right now, but trust me, when you're rereading One Piece and you get to the ending of Whole Cake Island, it will definitely feel like a huge, glaring, unresolved cliffhanger, and it will definitely feel jarring to see Jinbe kind of just show up later on without explanation. You may have forgotten because we're reading week to week and it's been so long, but just go back and read the end of Whole Cake Island and you'll see what I mean. No, I've heard this counter-argument from people. It does not make sense to say that Oda had to write Jinbe out of Wano just because otherwise Wano would have had too many characters in Act 2. No, that doesn't make sense because several Straw Hats were already given very little or very minimal plot lines in Wano as is. Oda could have just as easily made up something very simple, straightforward, limited panel time for Jinbe the way he did for Brook, and off-screen Jinbe for 95% of Act 2, the same way that Brook was, or the same way that Frankie was. This argument doesn't really make sense. There needs to be some reason for Jinbe's late arrival that warrants this gigantic cliffhanger, this huge glaring question mark at the end of Whole Cake Island. So, let me know your thoughts on all the Straw Hats below, if you agree or disagree, and if you enjoyed, then definitely like and subscribe, and you can get my extended thoughts on this and all future topics by supporting me on Patreon. Link in the description below.